Remember when TV was simple? You'd come home, grab a snack, and tune in to watch people willingly torture themselves for money.
All right, get your heads in the box.
Ah, the early 2000s, a time when fear factor reigned supreme. It wasn't just a show, it was a cultural event. People eating bugs, getting buried alive, and diving headfirst into freezing water.
She's having trouble finding the hole.
All for a chance to win some cash and maybe, just maybe, a tiny bit of clout.
Hey, and I push him, and he goes, I dare you to touch me again. I push.
But what happened? How did a show that was once a phenomenon turn into something so ridiculous that even the most thrill-seeking audiences had to tap out? When did Fear Factor stop being an intense survival game and become, well, whatever that donkey episode was? Oh, we'll get to that.
Inside this tank are 1,000 hockey pucks. 100 of them look like...
Fear Factor was once the ultimate test of human endurance, a proving ground for those brave enough or dumb enough to push their limits. But like all things in reality TV, it eventually crossed the line. And then it kept crossing the line until even the most die-hard fans said, yeah, no, I'm good.
Blended wrap. Oh, yeah, baby. You have 1 minute to transfer as many balls as you can. Oh, yeah.
When contestants were forced to drink blended rat smoothies or endure electric shocks while solving puzzles.
Go!
Let's get it, Kristen, come on.
Supposed to grab the tool, not all the wires.
Hey, grab...
It became clear that the show wasn't just pushing boundaries, it was bulldozing them. The show wasn't just about fear, it was about spectacle. It was about proving to your friends that you had the stomach to watch it without looking away. It was about gathering around the TV and screaming, no way, I could totally do that, before immediately admitting that no, you absolutely could not.
Legs are moving, dude. Antenna's moving. Say goodbye.
Bye, baby. Dude, it still creeps me out.
So let's go back to a time when Joe Rogan was just that guy from news radio, and when eating a cockroach on live television was considered cutting-edge entertainment. Fear Factor hit the airwaves in 2001, a time when people still use flip phones. Reality TV wasn't scripted yet, and low-rise jeans were somehow socially acceptable. The premise? Simple. Take a group of contestants, throw them into their worst nightmares, and see how far they'd go for $50,000. No alliances, no strategies, just pure, unfiltered terror.
Yeah, brother. Yes, please. Yes, please, brother.
And it worked. This wasn't just another reality show. This was appointment television. The stunts were straight out of an action movie. Contestants hanging from helicopters, sprinting across moving trucks, escaping underwater cages. It was Die Hard, except with real people screaming for their lives. And then there were the gross out challenges, which somehow became the most talked about part of the show. Drinking a blended rat, eating live spiders. America couldn't look away. It was disgusting. It was extreme, and it was must-watch TV. At the center of it all was Joe Rogan, long before he became the internet's most polarizing podcast host. He was the perfect ringmaster, equal parts sarcastic and supportive. One moment, he was reassuring a contestant about their fears. The next, he was casually reminding someone about the nutritional benefits of bull testicles. His deadpan delivery became legendary, like when he told a contestant hesitating to eat maggots, hey, at least they're full of protein. The show wasn't just popular, it was a cultural juggernaut. It topped ratings, outperformed scripted dramas, and even secured a Super Bowl commercial, the ultimate flex for any TV show. Fear Factor was everywhere. It inspired spin-offs like Fear Factor, Uncensored, Celebrity Editions, and even a kid-friendly version because apparently traumatizing adults wasn't enough. And then came the international takeover. The show was adapted in over 30 countries, with each version adding its own local nightmare fuel. In Sweden, contestants ate fermented fish that smelled like death itself. In Brazil, they faced off against anacondas. In India, they took on fire stunts straight out of a Bollywood action film. Fear Factor wasn't just a hit, it was a global sensation. Even outside the show, its influence was inescapable. Friends and The Simpsons made references to it. Comedians used it as stand-up material. Schools and summer camps started running their own Fear Factor challenges, thankfully without the raw animal organs. It redefined shock-based reality TV, paving the way for later shows like Wipeout, Naked, and Afraid. For a while, it felt unstoppable. With Fear Factor airing in more than 30 countries, it seemed like the insanity was here to stay. And then,
my stomach didn't stretch as much as I obviously.
the cracks started to show.
And most disgusting food challenges in Fear Factor history.
So when did things start going downhill? Well, like all great tragedies, it didn't happen overnight. At first, the show followed a predictable but effective formula. One terrifying stunt, one gross-out challenge, and one final adrenaline-pumping showdown. It worked, people loved it. But then the producers started to notice something. The audience was getting bored. The solution? More extreme stunts, more disgusting food challenges, and more humiliation.
All over his face on the way down.
At first, this escalation worked. People tuned in to see just how far the show could go. But as Fear Factor leaned harder into shock value, it started to lose what made it special in the first place. By the mid-2000s, the show was running out of ways to top itself. Contestants had already been buried alive, trapped in underwater cages, and force-fed animal organs. What was left? Well, the producers had an idea: make it even more unbearable.
Clive Van Damme punched me in my throat.
Good, it's cool, it's cool.
That's about halfway
I like
full.
You, baby. Hey, come on.
Suddenly, it wasn't just about conquering fears. It was about breaking people down for entertainment. Contestants were strapped into torture-like contraptions, covered in scalding wax, or forced to eat food so revolting that even the crew struggled to watch. And then came the lawsuits. In one infamous case, a contestant named Chad MacArthur sued NBC for $2.5 million, claiming that a particularly gruesome episode made him so physically ill that he ran into a wall and injured himself. The challenge? Drinking a blended rat.
Hell no.
Come on, Nicole. Yeah.
Yes, Fear Factor had gone from over-the-top reality show to potential biohazard. Animal rights activists were already furious over the show's treatment of insects, reptiles, and various unfortunate rodents. But Fear Factor only doubled down. One episode had contestants eating live spiders. Not dead, not cooked, literally plucked straight from a web and chewed on air. Another involved contestants lying in a glass coffin filled with hundreds of snakes, some of which had to be pried off their bodies after filming. Even Joe Rogan, who had once joked that nothing on the show shocked him anymore, admitted that things were getting a little too crazy. At this point, Fear Factor had been through multiple lives. It debuted in 2001, ran for 6 seasons before being canceled in 2006, only to be revived in 2011 with even more extreme challenges. The show was constantly reinventing itself, but each time it felt a little less like the original. There's a fine line between outrageous and just plain wrong, and Fear Factor was inching dangerously close to crossing it. And then came the moment when it wasn't just pushing boundaries anymore. It obliterated them. If you thought Fear Factor was already extreme, you clearly hadn't seen the infamous donkey episode. Was this the moment the show went too far? The moment it transitioned from shocking entertainment to outright insanity? Yes. This was the moment Fear Factor didn't just jump the shark. It catapulted over it, crashed, and burst into flames. For those unfamiliar, in a 2012 unaired episode, because even NBC was like maybe not, contestants were required to drink donkey semen and urine. Yes, you read that correctly. Not bull testicles, not pig intestines, not even blended rats. Donkey semen. Let's pause for a moment. Fear Factor had always been infamous for its grotesque eating challenges, raw animal organs, live insects, and questionable delicacies from around the world. But this wasn't just gross. This was an existential crisis for reality TV itself. Even Joe Rogan, the face of the show, later admitted in an interview that this challenge made him question everything.
I did it because, I did it to get people to do it. If they were like, I can't do it.
When your own host starts wondering if you've gone too far, that's when you know. At this point, Fear Factor had fully transitioned from extreme but entertaining to a social experiment gone horribly wrong. The episode was so controversial that NBC pulled it before it even aired, but the damage was done. The internet had already caught wind of it. The show, already suffering from declining viewership, had just delivered its own final punchline, and the insanity didn't stop there. By its later years, Fear Factor had moved away from actual fear and leaned more into straight-up torture. Contestants were no longer just pushing their limits, they were actively being broken down for entertainment. One episode forced contestants to stay submerged in freezing water for dangerously long periods, shivering uncontrollably, while Rogan casually narrated their suffering. Another had them locked in pitch-black claustrophobic boxes filled with aggressive animals. Because why just experience fear when you can also get bitten by a nest of snakes? And then there was the trivia round where wrong answers got contestants electrocuted, because apparently answering, "What is the capital of France?" wasn't stressful enough without 10,000 volts to the chest. By this point, the show had lost the plot. What started as a thrilling, adventurous series had devolved into a bizarre hybrid of Jackass, a medieval torture chamber, and a deeply concerning psychological experiment. In 2012, Fear Factor was canceled once again, and unlike previous cancellations, it felt definitive. Sure, it would be briefly revived in 2017 under MTV with a new host and a rebranded focus on millennial-driven dares. But by then, the magic and the shock factor was long gone.
They have to go through like a field of beams. Those are some of my favorite movies.
So, what happens when a show loses its core appeal and becomes a parody of itself? Simple. People stop caring. Fear Factor, once must-see TV, became the butt of every late-night joke. When the 2017 MTV reboot rolled around, it was obvious that the magic was gone. Hosted by Ludacris, because when you think extreme psychological endurance, you obviously think Fast and Furious, the new version desperately tried to modernize itself. Instead of terrifying stunts, the challenges were now inspired by internet culture. The result? A lineup of half-baked social media gimmicks like Stranger Danger, playing off online kidnapping fears, and Roach Ella, which, yeah, exactly what it sounds like. Gone were the towering skyscraper jumps, the death-defying helicopter stunts, the military-grade endurance tests. Instead, we got contestants digging through pudding for hashtags because nothing's extreme like a scavenger hunt through Jell-O. It was as if Fear Factor had evolved from a high-stakes adrenaline rush to an episode of Double Dare on sedatives. Audiences weren't scared anymore, they were just confused. The new version didn't tank because people couldn't handle the intensity. It tanked because it was trying too hard to be relevant. Meanwhile, the internet was doing what it does best, roasting Fear Factor into oblivion. One viral meme summed it up perfectly. A split-screen comparison of early 2000s contestants dangling from helicopters side by side with MTV-era contestants fishing plastic keys out of a kiddie pool filled with Jell-O. The caption? Fear Factor, from hardcore to playground edition. Memes flooded Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit, mocking how the show had gone from face your worst fears to face slightly uncomfortable inconveniences. TikTok surfaced, featuring clips of contestants struggling through bizarrely anticlimactic challenges, edited with captions like me trying to open a pickle jar when my hands are slightly wet. Even YouTubers jumped on the bandwagon, making compilation videos comparing the high-stakes, heart-pounding moments of the original show to the budget-friendly, watered-down MTV version. The audience reaction was brutal. Fear Factor used to be about surviving your worst nightmares. Now it's about surviving mild discomfort. They should rename this to Mildly Unpleasant Factor and call it a day. At this point, I've faced worse fears trying to unplug my phone charger in the dark. And let's not forget the viewership numbers. Fear Factor's MTV revival never gained traction, and by 2018, it was quietly canceled again. No major farewell episode, no dramatic final stunt, just a slow fade into irrelevance. Fear Factor didn't die because it was too extreme. It died because it stopped being Fear Factor. And in an era where TikTok challenges are often crazier than anything the show ever did, it's safe to say Fear Factor will never be able to shock audiences again. So can Fear Factor ever be saved? Could a reboot with even crazier challenges, AI-driven horror, or VR-induced panic attacks bring it back? Would audiences relive the glory days of human endurance and sheer lunacy? Unlikely. Times have changed. What once shocked and entertained now just feels desperate. The Fear Factor formula, extreme stunts, disgusting food, and public humiliation has been absorbed into internet culture. The craziest dares aren't on primetime TV anymore. They're on YouTube and TikTok where people do it for free. But let's not forget what Fear Factor gave us. For a while, it was the ultimate guilty pleasure, pure, unapologetic chaos on primetime TV. It pushed the limits of what people would do for money and, in its own twisted way, brought people together. Families sat around the TV, not to bond over heartwarming stories, but to collectively gag as someone chowed down on a blended rat smoothie. Disgusting? Absolutely. Iconic? Without a doubt. In the end, Fear Factor is a product of its time. The shock factor that once drew millions in started to feel forced, and audiences moved on to content that felt more real, even if it wasn't. And maybe that's okay. For all its absurdity, Fear Factor gave us moments we'll never unsee. And honestly, that was kind of beautiful.